When you walk into a massive, like an empty warehouse or an open field right before a festival starts, what do you actually see?
Right. It's just, concrete, maybe some exposed steel girders.
Exactly, just an empty expanse of grass. It's essentially this empty vessel.
It's just a void, right? A void just waiting to be filled. And usually, I mean, we think of filling those voids with physical objects or infrastructure.
Yeah, but then, someone flips a switch, the lights cut through the dark, the sound system kicks in, and suddenly that empty vessel is like a living, breathing ecosystem.
Oh, totally. You aren't just standing in a room anymore.
Right. You are inside a completely curated experience.
Hmm.
And that transformation, that's exactly what Belgian techno DJ Charlotte de Witte capitalized on when she launched KNTXT.
Which is such a fascinating case study.
It really is. It's a label that basically fundamentally rewrote the rules of the modern music industry. So today, we are pulling insights from a brilliant column by Monumental Movement Records, or MMR.
Yeah, and they do a great job mapping out how the streaming era really forced this evolution in business structures.
And look, to you listening, you don't even need to be a techno fan to appreciate this deep dive. What we're actually looking at is a masterclass in modern branding, the creator economy, and just how to build a unified physical and digital experience from absolute scratch.
I mean, we're basically looking at a blueprint for taking back control. It's this detailed study of how one artist recognized a massive structural shift in her industry, right?
Yeah.
And she responded by building an entire world around her own uncompromising aesthetic, rather than, letting some corporate entity dictate her path.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really grasp what KNTXT is doing, we kind of have to rewind a bit and look at the cultural earthquake that made it necessary in the first place.
Right, the streaming boom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The late 2010s brought on this streaming boom, which obviously changed how we all consume music on our phones, but it also dramatically changed the job description of the DJ.
It really did. I mean, for decades, the traditional role of a club DJ was essentially to be a selector.
Right. Digging through crates of records.
Exactly. Your primary job was to find the best tracks produced by other people and curate them to keep a dance floor moving. You were just the person in the dark booth curating the vibe.
But then streaming leveled the playing field, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Access to music was suddenly everywhere, so simply selecting tracks was, well, it was no longer a unique value proposition. Anyone with a smartphone could theoretically curate a playlist.
So the role just had to expand.
It did. The DJ became this focal point, a performer, and more importantly, a standalone brand.
And at the time, Charlotte de Witte was right in the center of that shift. She was playing everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
Yeah, moving from these dark, sweaty underground basement clubs to massive, sprawling outdoor festival stages. And as her personal brand grew, she kind of hit a ceiling with the traditional industry model.
Right, because the corporate model is very rigid.
Exactly. She realized she didn't want to rely on the existing corporate music labels anymore. She needed a space that fully, 100%, reflected her own musical direction.
So she just bypasses the middleman entirely.
She really did. She founds KNTXT in 2019. And the name itself is a massive clue to her mindset. It's literally the word context with the vowels removed.
I love that detail.
Right. It symbolizes this relentless focus on the philosophy, the culture, and the spatial experience behind the music. It's like a famous chef deciding they don't just want to cook in a massive corporate-owned hotel kitchen anymore.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, they want to buy the farm, grow their own ingredients, and design the restaurant's architecture from the ground up so they control the entire context of the meal.
What's fascinating here is the intentionality of that move.
Yeah.
KNTXT's birth was a highly strategic response to those structural changes in the music industry. de Witte wasn't just, looking for a vanity project so she could release her own tracks whenever she felt like it.
Right, it was much bigger than that.
Exactly. She was building a central hub for artists who shared a very specific aesthetic. She was responding to an industry that naturally tries to commodify successful artists.
So she just built her own walled garden where she made all the rules. But by controlling that physical and sonic space, she suddenly had to answer a new question, right? What does that space actually sound like?
And that's where the specific sound comes in, because KNTXT isn't just putting out any kind of electronic music.
Right. The source says they dominate a very specific, aggressive subgenre called peak time techno.
Yeah, and peak time techno represents the absolute highest energy portion of a club night. We're talking about the hours, usually well past midnight, when the crowd is fully locked in.
The energy in the room is just at its absolute maximum.
Precisely.
I am struggling a bit with this concept, though, because the article describes this sound as featuring incredibly heavy kicks, very minimal track structures, and relying heavily on repetition to induce a trance-like state. So, wait, is this just about making the loudest, most aggressive bass possible to blow out the speakers? Because honestly, doesn't everyone just get completely exhausted?
Well, I mean, that is a very common misconception about heavy electronic music.
Okay, so how is it sustainable then?
It's not about brute force at all. It's entirely about calculated precision. The sound is highly architectural.
Architectural? How so?
Well, think about the physics of sound for a moment. A low-end frequency that sounds incredibly punchy and tight in your expensive studio headphones
Yeah.
might turn into a muddy, echoing, unlistenable mess when you pump it out of massive speakers in a concrete warehouse. Or like a giant canvas festival tent. The sound waves bounce and collide.
Oh, wow. So you have to actually design the sound for the physical room it's going to live in. You're
Exactly.
engineering the track for the concrete.
That's spot on. KNTXT's acoustic signature, this intense emphasis on low-end frequencies and a very specific spatial spread, it's reverse engineered directly from de Witte's own experiences playing on those massive festival stages.
That is so smart.
Right. She took the acoustic data of what physically moves a massive crowd without muddying the sound system, and she used it to engineer her label's core sound. It's a functional design.
So they are matching their sonic supply with the exact physical demand of those peak club hours. Which brings us to this idea of the sustainability of energy from the source.
Which is such a crucial concept here.
It's fascinating. It's like they aren't writing a traditional song with a verse and a chorus. They're engineering an engine that has to run at top speed for hours without burning out the crowd.
And that requires incredible restraint in the studio. I mean, if every track is just constantly loud and throwing a million different chaotic sounds at the listener, the crowd does get exhausted, just like you suggested earlier.
Like sensory overload.
Exactly. But by stripping the track down to minimal structures and using heavy repetition, they induce that trance-like state. The brain stops trying to predict the next melody.
It just locks into the rhythm.
Yes, it allows the energy to sustain itself, keeping the listener engaged physically and psychologically over a very long period.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because all of this calculated sonic engineering leads us to a massive contradiction in how they operate as a business.
No, absolutely. The distribution strategy.
Yeah, creating these massive festival-ready tracks is one thing. But how KNTXT actually distributes that music completely breaks away from the major labels.
It's a total paradigm shift.
Right, because in a digital era where streaming algorithms practically beg creators for constant daily content, the whole upload constantly or die mentality.
Yeah, the churn.
Exactly. KNTXT actively avoids over-releasing music.
They are actively restricting their own supply in a market that basically demands infinite volume.
They choose strict quality and consistency over volume. Instead of dumping a 15-track album into the algorithm every few months, they release these tight, highly curated 4-track EPs.
And they rely heavily on a mix of physical formats, too, especially heavy vinyl pressings, right alongside their digital releases.
On top of that, they maintain a strictly unified visual identity. The artwork is incredibly minimal, usually just stark typography or simple geometric shapes.
But it carries a massive visual impact.
Exactly. They are restricting supply to build brand prestige.
This is where their strategy completely breaks away from the major labels. Traditional corporate labels are heavily reliant on those streaming algorithms.
Which means they dictate volume-heavy release schedules, right?
Exactly. They need a constant, never-ending churn of content to maximize those tiny fractional payouts from the streaming platforms. It becomes a pure numbers game.
It's like playing the lottery by buying a million $1 tickets instead of just investing in a single high-value asset. You just flood the platform and hope the algorithm picks up one of the tracks.
Precisely. But KNTXT, being an artist-led model, it allows for flexible release timing and total control over aesthetic consistency.
Because they aren't desperately chasing the algorithm for pennies.
Right. They can focus their resources on the physical artifact, the vinyl record, and the visual identity that surrounds it. They're successfully balancing global scale with strict artistic integrity.
It proves that you don't have to play the algorithm's volume game if your product is so culturally resonant that people will actually wait for it.
Yes, and it makes every single release feel like a genuine event.
Totally. If you only get a handful of records a year and they are pressed on thick vinyl with this striking minimalist art, it feels premium.
You aren't just casually streaming a disposable digital file in the background while you do dishes.
Exactly. You are buying into the prestige of the label. And that unified front serves a much larger purpose because this strict control over the audio, the restricted release schedule, the visual branding.
It's all about bringing the music out of the headphones and into the real world.
Yes, this is the moment where KNTXT transitions from being just a cool boutique record label to becoming a full-blown empire.
They undergo the spatialization of the label. They turn a sonic idea into a physical destination.
Because KNTXT operates as a fully experienced type brand. When you go to a KNTXT event, you aren't just seeing a random assortment of DJs thrown onto a flyer.
Right. The events feature highly concentrated lineups of KNTXT's own roster of artists.
And they use unified lighting and visual production that perfectly matches that minimalist artwork from the vinyl sleeves.
Plus, they focus on incredibly long DJ sets designed for that deep immersion we talked about. They are essentially manifesting the label's core ethos into a physical space.
It's taking the feeling of playing that vinyl record in your living room and blowing it up to the size of a stadium. It sounds like they aren't just selling the soundtrack to a movie, They are building the entire theme park where you go to live inside that movie.
I love that analogy.
Thanks. You get the ticket, you walk through the gates, the lighting matches the vinyl cover you bought last month. The sound system is perfectly engineered for the massive room you are standing in.
And the artists playing on stage are all characters in this specific sonic universe. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is how you create an inescapable feedback loop of value.
Okay, let's walk through how this circular ecosystem actually functions in practice.
Sure. So, imagine a casual fan discovers a striking vinyl EP in a record store. Or maybe they hear a Charlotte de Witte track online.
Okay.
That initial touch point makes them buy a ticket to a massive KNTXT physical event. At that event, while immersed in the lighting and the sound, they hear a brand new up-and-coming underground DJ playing on the KNTXT lineup.
Right.
That fan then goes back home, opens their streaming app, and searches for that new DJ's tracks.
And that streaming revenue and increased demand funds the next vinyl release and the next physical event.
Exactly, which feeds right back into the label and Charlotte de Witte's central brand. The machine feeds itself perfectly.
And the growth timeline is staggering when you look at it. They went from launching an experimental label in 2019 to dominating global festival main stages just 36 months later.
It's incredibly fast.
By 2020, they had international recognition. In 2021, they launched their own massive arena events. And by 2023, they were a permanent, self-sustaining global brand.
That is an absolute rocket ship of a trajectory. But it is speed built on a very solid architectural foundation.
Because they control the context from day one.
Exactly. From the reverse-engineered heavy kicks to the stark minimal artwork to the unified laser lighting at the events, every single touch point reinforced the others.
The theme park didn't have any generic off-brand rides.
Nope. Every single element was undeniably KNTXT.
So what does this all mean? Because they've built this impressive empire incredibly fast. But looking forward, we have to look at the vulnerabilities of this model. Can an artist-led structure actually survive long-term?
Or is it inherently too fragile? That's the real question.
Right, because the analysis points out a really crucial bottleneck. The current massive success of KNTXT relies almost entirely on the personal influence, the vision, and the star power of Charlotte de Witte herself.
Yes, which highlights the inherent danger of the cult of personality in business.
Exactly. What happens if de Witte decides she is burnt out and wants to take a 2-year hiatus? Can the label survive without its founder constantly at the wheel, pulling every single lever?
That is the ultimate test of this business model. Because, a cult of personality is an incredibly powerful engine for launching a brand. Fans connect with a human face much faster than a corporate logo.
Of course.
But it is not a sustainable long-term strategy for a lasting entity. If she steps away tomorrow, the entire ecosystem could collapse.
So how do they fix that?
Well, to be truly sustainable and outlive its founder's direct involvement, MMR points out KNTXT has to focus on 3 specific pillars moving forward. They have to transition from being just Charlotte de Witte's passion project to being an independent cultural hub.
Okay, what's the first pillar?
The first pillar is nurturing new artists. The label cannot just be a promotional vehicle for its founder's own tracks.
It must become a genuine incubator for the next generation of talent who fit that peak time aesthetic.
Exactly. The fans need to trust the label's curation as much as they trust the founder.
Makes sense. And the second,
The second pillar is evolving the sound. Peak time techno is globally dominant right now, but, music is cyclical. Tastes will eventually shift.
they always do.
Right. The label must figure out how to adapt to new acoustic trends while maintaining its core minimalist identity.
Okay. And the third pillar.
Expanding regionally. They need to move beyond their current geographic strongholds in Europe and establish deep physical and cultural roots in new global markets.
Wow. So if they are successful in balancing those three pillars, they move from being an individual's phenomenon to a lasting cultural institution.
They are currently answering the ultimate question of what a label even is in modern music. If KNTXT masters these future goals, they don't just secure their own financial future.
They provide a proven, sustainable blueprint for all other music genres.
Precisely. They prove that an artist-led platform can become a permanent cultural fixture, completely independent of the traditional corporate machine.
It is such an incredible journey when you step back and look at the mechanics of it all together. We started with the DJ navigating a streaming era that desperately wanted to turn her into a disposable commodity.
And instead, she took back control.
She really did.
Huh.
She analyzed the acoustic physics of massive festival tents to reverse engineer the ultimate peak time techno sound.
She aggressively restricted her own releases to build prestige, right when everyone else was frantically chasing algorithms.
Yeah, with those lottery ticket uploads. And she created a holistic physical experience brand with his own circular self-funding ecosystem. KNTXT has fundamentally redefined the modern music industry by proving you don't have to play by the old rules.
Not if you can just control the entire context of your art.
Exactly. It's a masterclass in treating your art as an immersive world rather than a disposable product. And whether you are building a tech startup, opening a bakery, or launching an online brand, the underlying mechanics here are completely universal.
Control your context.
Yes. Aggressively focus on quality over algorithmic volume, and build an experience that people can actually step inside.
As we wrap up this analysis, there is a lingering thought I want to leave you with.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Especially as we consider where the broader entertainment industry is heading. We are rapidly entering an era where artificial intelligence and predictive algorithms are becoming increasingly capable of generating perfectly personalized audio tracks for us on demand.
Right.
So if a machine can perfectly synthesize the exact peak time techno kick drum you want to hear, seamlessly mixed right when you want to hear it,
Yeah.
will the only surviving music labels of the future be the ones that, exactly like KNTXT, can offer an irreplaceable, unified physical and cultural space that goes far beyond the audio itself?
Oh, wow. Because when the music itself can be infinitely generated by a machine, the only thing left of actual value is the physical room you stand in to hear it alongside other people.
Exactly.
That is wild to think about. Next time you walk into a massive, empty warehouse, ask yourself, who is going to flip the switch? And what kind of world are they inviting you into? Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We will see you next time.